Chag Sameach. We are celebrating the second day Yom Tov. We're going to dedicate the Dvar Torah today to focusing specifically on the various interesting names of this holiday that we're celebrating. We're not going to go through every option. I just want to highlight 3 particular names and try to examine why we have these names. Let us start with Chag HaCherut, the festivity of freedom. Last week we spoke about this concept already, and we mentioned the beautiful Ma'amar Chazal that relates to the tablets, to Luchot HaBrit, that were etched with the finger of God. And Chazal say, Al tikri charut al haluchot, ela cherut. Don't read etched on the tablets, but rather freedom on the tablets. A very strange statement. What is the connection between cherut, freedom, and the tablets? And why would we call the festivity the holiday of freedom? I'll tell you why that particular name disturbs me. Let us think about the mental status of the free nation, a nation of slaves that is finally freed from Egypt. Imagine to yourself a member of this great clan, as you were required to do a few nights ago on the Seder night. You were supposed to experience like you yourself came out of Egypt. So, imagine to yourself, you came out of Egypt. You're finally free. Nobody is making you get up in the morning. Nobody is making you work hard. You don't have any real responsibilities. Free at last. And now you find yourself crossing the sea, and you look back, and you look forward, and you must say to yourself, oh my God, I'm in the middle of a desert. What do I do now? Have you ever wondered what was going through people's minds? To travel into a desert without a clear destination, not knowing what's going to happen there? Great, I'm free. Now what? When you ponder on this issue, and you really try to delve into it, you will see that it is a very difficult question, and perhaps it hallmarks the entire behavior of the Jewish people throughout the years of the journey through the desert. But without getting into it too deeply, I believe that we are given this particular name for the holiday to highlight to us the great challenges of freedom. It is wonderful to be free. But when we're free, we absolutely have to have a direction, a goal, an objective. All of us know what it's like when the school year is over and our kids are finally out of school and they have this long, long summer vacation. What would we do without summer camps? If the kids were hanging out at home, what would they do? They would have no structure. It would be a disaster. A young nation is led out into freedom. And this same young nation chooses to march and follow God. When I mentioned last week the prophet Yirmiyahu and his statement, Zacharti lach chesed ne'urayich, lechtech acharai bamidbar be'eretz lo zeruah. I remembered the chesed of your youth when you walked after me in the desert, in a land that was unseeded. What the prophet is relating to is the great choice that the Jewish people have made, as a people and as individuals, to march after God in this desert, when they didn't know where they were going to go, and they really didn't know how they were going to have sustenance to be able to survive the journey through the desert. And yet they decided to stick together. This becomes far more profound after the great tragedy of the spies that speak badly about the land of Israel and wind up condemning the entire generation to walk through the desert for 40 years, in which they're being told, you're going to spin around in circles for the next 40 years and then you're going to drop dead. Only your children are going to come into the land. And the people embraced this fate and made a decision. If it was me, I probably would have packed a suitcase and gone somewhere else. Try my luck somewhere. Maybe I'll go to Midian. Maybe I'll go to Cush. Maybe I'll just find somewhere else to live. The Jewish people stood together and said, yes, we sinned, we messed up. Now we have a goal. That is raising a young generation that will be worthy of stepping on the grounds of Eretz Yisrael. We start off this holiday by celebrating our relationship with our children, and we build a Seder night around the experience of a child. And we end this holiday with the same message of saying, raise your children properly. Invest in setting for your children goals and targets, aspirations. Make sure that they are proper Avdei Hashem. And that is the true way to celebrate Chirut. Another name that we give for the holiday is Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of matzahs. Often wondered about this name. Yes, it seems to be the central theme. This is what we eat. The reason matzah always bothered me was because it was hard for me to understand why we needed the matzahs in the first place. Within this time frame, we can't go into the entire discussion, but I'll just highlight the key problem. The Jewish people were told on the first day of the month of Nisan that in 10 days from today, you are going to be required to take the lamb, tie it to your bedpost, and then 4 days later, at night, you're going to sacrifice this lamb, because that's going to be the great night in which we're going to leave Egypt. Which meant they were told about the Exodus a full 2 weeks before it happened. So even if you had a hard time believing, and you weren't one of those guys that were going to risk tying the lamb to your bedpost, after all, you saw things coming down. It was happening. The big night did come around. Even if you didn't believe it at that point. And even when everyone was preparing their homes with their Korban Pesach, all packed to go, you were still denying the events. At midnight, when the firstborn of Egypt was struck, you were kicked out of the house. Told it's time to go. Well, the Jews were kicked out already at midnight, but they didn't leave until 12 noon the next day. Simple question is, how long does it take to bake a loaf of bread? What was the problem? They weren't rushing anywhere. There wasn't this big pressure. Yes, it's true. We know what packing's like. But they were going into the desert. I don't know how much packing they did. They took whatever they could, and they left. So why not bake? Why stick with matzah? Even stranger is, we're told that on the night in which they prepared their Korban Pesach, they ate it with matzah. What was their excuse? These are the guys that actually prepared the lamb 4 days earlier. What did they need matzah for? Well, it's always difficult to take the right kind of perspective. But I think that part of what the Haggadah is trying to do to us is say to ourselves, you know, if you were in Egypt, you were part of that generation, what do you think you would do? You think you would be tying the lamb to your bedpost? Think you would have the guts to have your stuff packed? Would you really believe that this great day is happening? Or would you be like most Jews that are sitting around the house and trying to see, let's hedge our bets and see what happens? Let's not take any chances. Well, for most Jews, they were thrown out of their house in the middle of the night. In their gatkes. They were thrown out. In their pajamas. Go! Leave! They couldn't pack anything. And the only thing they could think of, oh my God, we better go find a Jewish home, quick! And they went crazy trying to find a house with some blood on it, so they could get a piece of the Korban Pesach. Because they realized it's for real. Well, you know, these guys had a real problem. They didn't have time to bake. They didn't have time for anything. Indeed, the matzah was for all those people that didn't believe, for all those people that weren't ready. And even those that had the Korban Pesach prepared in advance were told, make sure to prepare the sacrificial lamb for you and for your neighbor, because you're going to have lots of neighbors that are not going to be ready. And make sure to have your arms open for them. So we celebrate Chag HaMatzot because we celebrate the requirement for unity amongst our people. The requirement that before you could start the Seder night, you say, Kol dichvin yetevi echol. Anyone that passes by, come in and eat with me. Because that's our true job as we start, once again, the cycle of the 3 regalim. You want to stand in front of God and celebrate? Don't come alone. Make sure that those people that require matzah have what they need. Make sure that your celebration is only complete when you make sure that you're celebrating with other people. Our time is running short, so one very brief last thought. The primary name that we give to holiday, Passover, Pesach. Strangest name to give to a holiday. After all, out of all the great miracles that occurred throughout this great saga, Pesach represents the skipping over by the angel of death over the Jewish homes when he struck the firstborn of Egypt. I never thought that was such a big deal. After all, every one of the plagues had the same story. The Egyptians were plagued and the Jews were not. It is a theme that runs throughout the entire 10 plagues. What's the big deal? Why are we putting a focus on the fact that he skipped over the Jewish homes? Perhaps because it is the homes in particular that he was skipping over. Because the Torah tells us, how was it that when a plague spread out, it skipped over every Jewish home? This was not an ordinary plague, like the other plagues. This plague required an action, a very particular action. You had to take the blood, both from your circumcision and from the sacrificial lamb, and put it on your bed, on your doorposts, as if to declare loud and clear, this is a Jewish home. It took a lot of guts to be able to do that in Egypt. It took a tremendous amount of courage to be able to stand up after all these years of slavery and say, I am a Jew, and this is a Jewish home. And we are proud of that. The holiday of Pesach starts first and foremost with Jewish pride. Stand up tall. Understand who you are, where you came from, and what you represent. Now you could go out and celebrate. Celebrate with God, celebrate with your family, and celebrate in such a way that declares to the entire world, I am a Jew, and this is a Jewish home. Chag Sameach to you all.